For the assessment review assignment, we learned about the administrating, scoring, and interpretations of the Early Reading Diagnostic Assessment, also known as ERDA. This assessment can be administered to grades kindergarten through first. However, we will be specifically looking at the practices of kindergarten. ERDA is an early reading assessment that focuses on 5 key content areas. These areas include phonological awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. Next, we'll take a look at the materials. The materials that are included within the ERDA assessment include a training CD that trains teachers on how to administer this assessment, directions for using ERDA Second Edition decision trees that entails recommended subtests that help provide a higher level comprehensive visual of reading strengths and areas of improvement, the technical manual that gives a detailed description on how the assessment is to be administered along with what the student will perform, lookup table for converting raw scores to percentile ranges for winter, provides an example of how to convert raw scores into percentile ranges. The stimulus book contains the content and procedures of each section that will be assessed. The administration manual provides a look into all levels that can be assessed, which are kindergarten, first, second, and third grade, and what the administration and scoring guidelines are for each. A stopwatch to time specific areas of assessment that required measurable increments. Decision tree, a strategic roadmap for coordination, ERDA, and DIBELS, and planning effective instruction, which place emphasis on how to incorporate the DIBELS assessment with the ERDA to provide a more comprehensive understanding of the child's needs. The record form that is utilized to record each answer the child provides for the assessment, and parent report that gives a summary and purpose of the assessment that the child will participate in. Next, we'll take a look at the purpose of this assessment. The Early Reading Diagnostic Assessment is based on norm referencing, which yields a position of a student's placement to a predetermined population standard, and diagnostic assessment that determines a student's abilities and weaknesses before instruction begins. Through both of these practices, students' level of achievement and reading skills can be gauged to help not only the academic performance of the student, but also the strategies the teacher utilizes. The Early Reading Diagnostic Assessment guides a teacher for curriculum development through lesson planning while taking into consideration the diverse needs of each student. By using this assessment, early intervention links can be realized through the scoring results that each student possesses. Next, we'll take a look at the administration of the assessment through story retell.
Now be assessing story retell. I am going to read you a short story about a little boy. Then I will ask you some questions about the story. Then I will ask you to tell me the same story. Are you ready to listen?
Yep.
The title of this story is Michael's New Buddy. Michael wished he had a pet, like some of his friends. He asked his mother, "Can I have a dog?" "No," his mom said. "Dogs bark." He asked his grandmother, "Can I get a cat?" "No," his grandmother answered. "Cats make me sneeze." Michael thought all day about his problem. That night at dinner, Michael asked, "How about a fish?" They are quiet. Mom and won't make your noise itch, Grandma. And I can take care of it all by myself. Said Mom. Said Grandma. Yes, they agreed. Later that week, Mom and Grandma surprised Michael with a goldfish from the pet store. Michael was so happy he named his fish buddy. Now I want you to answer some questions about the story. Why didn't his mom want Michael to have a dog?
The dog barks.
Why didn't his grandma want a cat?
Made her sneeze.
What are 2 reasons Michael thought a fish would be a great pet?
It won't make Grandma sneeze. And it won't bark.
Now I want you to tell the story about Michael in your own words. Try not to leave anything out of the story.
Michael really wanted a pet. He asked his mom if he could get a dog. She said no, because dogs bark. He asked Grandma if he could get a cat. Grandma said no, cats make her sneeze. So at dinner, Michael asked Mom and Grandma if he could get a fish, because fish don't bark and they won't make Grandma sneeze. Mom and Grandma said, yes, you can get a fish. So the next day, they got Michael a fish. He named him Buddy.
Very good. That is the end of story retelling.
Now we'll take a look at the interpretation of scores. While the student was participating in the assessment, there was evidence of confidence with some subjects and contemplation in others. Specifically, during the syllables portion of assessment, the child was taking more time to decipher the words pencil, paper, and potato, determine where the word was broken up by syllables. During these words, it was apparent that the child had a misunderstanding about the letter P and its relationship with the other letters of the words. This section was the lowest scoring of the entire assessment, where the student scored a 7 out of 10 within the 6 to 64 percentile range that is considered basic. Even though the child presented these patterns for syllables, she also exemplified a proficient scoring of 26 out of 28 for story retell, where she was confident and fluent with the oral description of the story. This confidence was also apparent in several other sections where she also scored within the 95 to 99 percentile range, such as phonological awareness, composite, phonics, letter recognition, fluency, passage fluency, vocabulary, composite, receptive and expressive, and comprehension for reading comprehension. Considering these strengths and weaknesses, we can progress forward to develop appropriate instruction that develop the areas of improvement and strengths. Next, we'll look at the positive and negative attributes of this assessment. Now we'll take a look at 3 positive attributes. 1. During the administration of the early reading diagnostic assessment, a teacher can record and observe pertinent information that can later be used for specialized instruction. The data collected can be morphed into a guide that the teacher can sketch out to determine the appropriate instructional strategies to ensure that the student's needs are met. 2. This is not only a guide that is shared with teachers, but also the parents or guardians of the students being assessed. Within the materials for the ERDA, a parent report information handout is included for clarifying the purpose, advantages of administering this assessment. It includes information such as what focus areas the ERDA 2nd edition measures and the why for each. Additionally, it lays out a foundational framework of their student's profile that explains how the scores they received are interpreted and compared to their predetermined standard. Finally, this informational handout explains to the parents and guardians how they can affect and help their reader become successful, and resources they can utilize for at-home experiences. 3. Since the assessment can be performed at the younger stages of development, it can be a tool that indicates any need for early intervention. By using the data that is recorded and interpreted onto the record form, teachers are given a visual representation of the educational gaps that may be present. This is viewed through the conversion table that enables teachers to understand raw scores as percentiles that can be compared among a variety of content. Next, let's take a look at 3 drawbacks. 1. Once ERDA is complete, the question at hand is where do we go from here? Unfortunately, the materials included do not give any recommendations for why the performance level of a student is located where it is. Some underlying reasonings for why the results show an educational achievement gap could potentially be undiagnosed impairments such as visual, auditory, or speech and language. If the ERDA included what impairments may be linked with each focus area, teachers could more accurately recommend a child for further testing with a skilled professional. 2. Another drawback of this particular assessment is the ability of inaccurate results based on personal attributes of each child. The outside factors that affect a child's life need to be taken into consideration for results. Significant factors that could alter results can be unfamiliarity with the layout or purpose of the examination. Along with this, students may feel extensive anxiety or stress due to the pressure that is put on them in the test-taking environment. 3. The final issue to be addressed for the ERDA is the level of accuracy that is needed by the teacher's performance. The teacher is required to use administration recording, and scoring instruction to develop a measurable piece of data for the student through this assessment. However, the specific assessment leaves minimal area for error for the teacher. Let's take a look at how this connects with others. Since the purpose of this assessment is to retrieve signs and identify readers who may need additional attention and intervention strategies, this assessment would connect well with DIBEL's 6th edition assessment. The dynamic indicators of basic early literacy skills, known as DIBELS, is used to assess the development of early literacy skills by conducting brief, 1-minute fluency tests. To best use this assessment, it is recommended that a teacher first administer DIBELS to determine a generalized target for where a child may be exceeding or at risk for intervention, specifically with literacy skills. While DIBELS takes a quick view of the child's knowledge, such as labeling at risk, some risk, and low risk, deficient, emerging, and established, ERDA can further condense the target area to more appropriately form instruction to the child in need. This can be accomplished by viewing specific literacy skills such as phonological awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. For the feedback portion of this assessment, it is pertinent to keep in mind the sandwich method of communication, where we begin with positive aspects, move into areas of improvement, and wrap up the meeting with more areas where the student performed exceptionally well. To begin, the teacher showed to the student the scoring that she received on the comprehension portion of the assessment, which included story retell and reading comprehension. The score within these sections was within the 95 to 99 percentile range. The teacher expressed that as the student retold the story about Michael, his mother, and grandmother, she expressed complete knowledge of the events that happened. This included knowing that Michael wanted a pet, why his mother and grandmother did not want Michael to get a pet, the possible solutions Michael suggested, and Michael finally receiving a fish named Buddy as his pet. Although the student performed well on this section of the assessment, the student needed to improve upon phonological awareness syllables. Specifically within the syllables section, the student confused the letter P as a separate syllable with the words pencil, paper, and potato. This led to the student assigning 3 syllables to pencil instead of 2, 3 syllables to paper instead of 2, and 3 syllables to potato instead of 2. To end the meeting, the teacher elaborated on another section where the student performed at their best. This section was the phonics letter recognition, where the student not only received a perfect score within the 95 to 99 percentile range by identifying each letter that was presented alongside others such as M in the sequence of U, W, M, but she also showed confidence when identifying the letters. Since we had collected all of our data, we can now look at the next steps for instruction. To assist the student in improvement for recognition of syllables, it would be of best practice to show the student multiple ways in which she can segment a word to discover the correct amount of syllables. One way this can be done is through segmentation and then blending of a word. To portray this, the student holding out one arm forwardly as a chopping board and using the other hand as a karate chop will chop up the word into chunks, which represent syllables. Once the child has successfully chopped a word, they will then blend the chunks into one fluent word. Sliding the chunks of the word together down the arm portrays this. The student will use this tactic whenever they are struggling with identifying syllables within the word. Another strategy the student can use to recognize syllables within words is through Elkonin boxes. Elkonin boxes are separated blocks that are green, red, and yellow within the segmented areas of paper. Each color represents a syllable for a word. For example, with the word potato, po would be within the green box, tate would be within the red box, and o would be within the yellow box. Once the child has recognized the syllables as separate entities, they can then blend the letters back together to represent the word as a whole. Each of these strategies assists the child in recognizing syllables by breaking the words down into smaller segments to visually and conceptually understand. The teacher will be actively scaffolding the student throughout this time by first modeling the strategies, checking for understanding, and for the classroom's examples part of this assessment, we talked with many professors from Slippery Rock University and reached out to multiple school districts. We were unable to find any teachers who had ever administered this assessment. Amongst these current working professionals, we also contacted multiple retired teachers due to the published date of 2003 for the early reading diagnostic assessment, who also had never administered the test. From this, we concluded that this assessment might have been a second choice for teachers compared to the more generalized DIBELS assessment that is similar in purpose. Along with this, we recommend to update the assessment materials that are available in Slippery Rock University's library for more appropriate and current avenues teachers assess their students with in order to recognize what specific areas they need improvement and additional support in. We will wrap up this review by reflecting on the assessment. Throughout this assessment, the student was able to exemplify their understanding through oral and touch communication of each targeted area that was presented orally and visually. Although this widened the variety of aspects the student was assessed on, it also presented limitations for the student. This was specifically viewed during the comprehension section of the assessment, where the student was only read a story aloud and was not given the opportunity to visually see words or pictures to make connections with the text provided. This placed more of an emphasis on their auditory skills and less on their ability to comprehend what is happening in a story. Alongside the limitations that were presented, there were also positive attributes of the assessment that encouraged the building of connections with the child. This was viewed in the vocabulary section where pictures were provided to help the student make thoughtful connections to real-world experiences and the vocabulary that needed to be identified. These aspects of the early reading diagnostic assessment supported learners in their educational development, but also indicated gaps that are crucial for the advancement of learning. If these gaps were addressed, we believe the students would be given a better opportunity to make connections not only with text and pictures, but with concepts throughout their literacy world.